This is a video game, and we're going to turn it into an MMORPG. Now, granted, it's not a very fun video game yet, but that's okay, because today we're just going to focus on the network infrastructure. We've worked on a lot of different projects at Noble Steed Games here, but I've always wanted to explore making an MMO, so that's what this video series is going to be. Today, our goal will be to take this simple little game where these capsules move around and make it networked, so two different players can sign up, join the game, and move around each other. But first, let's talk about network infrastructure. Modern multiplayer games are quite complex and are built on a lot of different systems, but the ones we're going to focus on for this video are the following. The game client, which is the thing that the player downloads to actually play the game. The game server, which hosts the rooms that the players will be joining and manages real-time networking between players. And the game backend, which stores more permanent data and information like authentication information or player inventories. It's worth noting that these two can sometimes both be referred to as the server, but to keep things simple, we're going to call this one the server and this one the backend. Let's start with the backend. So for this project, we've decided to build the backend using .NET. This is a pretty common stack for web apps, which is mostly what this will be. We've decided to use it for this project because it's in C#. I kind of have this lofty goal of sharing as much code between these different pieces as possible, so to simplify things, hopefully that will work out. I don't know, we'll see. It's worth noting there are a lot of decisions that we can be making for this project which depend on specifics of our project. I'll do my best to call out those decisions as they come up and explain why we're choosing what we're choosing, but it's worth noting that you might want to make different design decisions based on what you're looking to build. If that happens, I don't know, pop it in the comments, we can discuss it there. Anyway, since .NET is used for a lot of simple REST API type web apps, it's pretty easy to get that set up. We really just need a few simple pieces at the moment. We need a database which stores our users and a few endpoints which allow users to sign up and log in. In Unity, we just write some simple wrappers to interface with these endpoints, and we're all able to log in, and that's all perfect. The other thing that the backend is going to be used for is server orchestration. Right now, our backend is set up so that it just spawns a single server for everyone to connect to, but in the future, we'll probably want to have a whole different system of servers, depending on things like player count or regions around the world. That'll come in the future, we'll talk about that later, but for right now, we're just going to have the backend spawning a single server. It's a little janky, but it'll do for right now. Heading over to the actual game, our next step is going to be to get this networked. For this, we'll be using Photon Fusion. Again, partially informed by our specific circumstances, but we're using Fusion mostly because we've used it for other projects, which is always nice, and our game isn't going to have anything like networked physics, which maybe we might want to lean towards a different engine. With that in mind, we can just follow the simple Fusion 101 tutorial to get a basic game up and running. We can start by setting it up as a simple peer-to-peer shared network experience. We create our networked input, we add a network transform, and we're good. Then it's not too complex to change it to being a server-hosted experience with all the clients connecting. So we've got the basics of each of our three pieces up and running. The next step is to connect them a bit more actively, but before we can do that, we should talk about trust. Currently, our client sends their login information to the backend. This confirms they are who they say they are and gives them all their user info, and then they connect to the server. But there's an issue here. The client can't be responsible for telling the server who they are because they could lie. If the client says that they're an admin or some other player, the server shouldn't just believe them, right? The general principle for network games like this is that the backend and the server should never completely trust the client. So how do we get around this? Well, there are a few different answers of different levels of complexity, but for now we're going to go with a fairly simple system. It works like this. First, the client logs into the backend with their username and password. Assuming that that's correct, the backend knows who that client is and allows them to access their user information. Next, the client connects to the server, and they get a unique ID there as well. The server doesn't know yet who this ID belongs to. The client doesn't say who they are at this point, but the server knows, hey, we've got a client who's connected that matches this specific ID. Now next, the client takes that ID and passes it to the backend. The backend already knows who it's coming from, they've already authenticated them, and can then say to the server, hey, this ID that you've passed out, we know that this ID belongs to this specific user. That way, the server knows that their ID belongs to this user without ever trusting the user themselves. And that client who has that ID is the only one who can connect to the server and use it. If another client connects, they don't have the right ID on the server, so they wouldn't be able to connect to those specific users' information. It's not a perfect solution. A more advanced one using proper authentication tokens is probably what we'll implement later, but this will serve our purposes for right now. So let's see it in action. Hey, it works! We've connected to the server. So if we log in with another user, there they are, there's two, and these two can move around and have a blast. I think there's one more thing we should do though, which is just to add a little bit of UI above each player so we can display their name. Our users don't have a name right now, they only have an email, so we'll have to use that, although I guess it's obvious, but we should point out in a real game, you never really want a user to be identified by their email, especially not publicly. That's kind of strange, but this will do as an example until we get this game a little bit more polished. And there we go. Both the users log in. They see the email address of the other user. Ooh, probably shouldn't do that, but that's okay. It's been authenticated by the backend. It's been provided to the server, so we know a user is who they say they are. And they can run around and interact and be a happy little capsule. Obviously, this game is not very fun yet, but at least we've been able to set up the simple network infrastructure. We got a long way to go before this is a real MMORPG, but these are the basic pieces that will get it all working. Next time, we'll make this look a bit more like an MMO, with actual characters moving around and actually chatting to each other. See you then.